So phenomenal to have everyone here in this room. As Mike said, it's such an honor to be back. This is my third year presenting for Jewelry Ecom, and it was fun to take the slides and review the presentation I did last year, which was such an unprecedented year, and really hone in on the state of the industry as we step into another year of, tremendous growth, of a lot of action. So today will be really oriented towards things you can do. So if you've been to any of my presentations before, this isn't just theory, this is things that are actually working actively in the marketplace. So what we'll be talking about today are things you can take. It's President's Day, so if you have the day off, if you're hanging with the kids, if you're watching this recording, these are things that you can actively do today, tomorrow, and certainly implement to have a phenomenal runway into Q3 and Q4 this year. So as you're arriving, or if you're watching the replay, please let us know where you're coming from, and we will be saving questions to the end. So if you do have any questions on what we're talking about, feel free to put it in chat, and at the end, we will open it up for more of a Q&A discussion. You guys are the ones behind the scenes in the trenches, so we're always so excited to hear what's working for you. Typically after a presentation like this, I'll get DMs on Instagram, so I'll give you my Instagram handle, and people will say, Kathleen, I was listening to you in the car, I pulled over, I took the advice you had, and I actually made a sale. So this is really actionable, really exciting things that you can go ahead and do. So as you guys know, this was a crazy year for jewelry. The jewelry market is in the bees, right? We know that. We have a great understanding. So many of the retailers I worked with had their biggest year ever. So many designers are going to the Centurion show, going to New York Now, and having these phenomenal years. So we have that foundational understanding. So many people have had this big resurgence in jewelry buying. I know a lot of our clients have been selling more jewelry for anniversaries, for birthdays, whereas those used to be things people would travel for, fine dining, go to the opera. So the jewelry industry is always here to stay. We're one of the oldest forms of art. So we have a real tremendous staying power that I think is here to grow. I really do believe we are going to continue to grow and expand. Weddings are back in force. So the Knot predicted 2.6 million weddings for 2022. A lot of those might look a little bit unconventional. I know my cousin just got married in Costa Rica via Facebook Live is how we all attended. A lot more elopements, a lot more custom. So, I do think that there will be less traditional weddings, and this is you're going to have more stressed out couples because who knows what it's going to be like planning a wedding in 2022. So many vendors might have canceled on them. So the growth potential is just tremendous here as well. Audio is in an echo chamber. Okay, cool. So thank you. I'm always monitoring chat. I will save questions at the end, but especially audio. Mike, let me know if I need to change anything on my end. And okay, yeah, so weddings are back in force, but there is uncertainty on the horizon. And this is something that as an industry and as, a society, if you're reading the New York Times, if you're reading the Wall Street Journal, we can't ignore. There's a lot of volatility in the market. We've been in, 14-year cycle of growth. I do think there's tremendous staying power for the jewelry industry, but I do think, to take an adage from the farmers, we need to make hay while the sun is shining. We need to truly look at our sales, look at our sales staff, and especially look at our strategies with connecting towards the affluent while we have this period of growth, and really develop a playbook that future-proofs your business. What we'll be talking about today is basically the intersection of old school techniques combined with super modern strategies. So this is really foundational. There'll be so many more lectures this week in this period of the jewelry ecom presentation that kind of go through some implementations and nitty gritty. And this is really about how can you take this time that you're investing in jewelry ecom and really create a playbook for you for the future to ensure that your business has this legacy staying power and that you can continue to have this huge growth in the next decade. And the number one strategy for 2022 is unique, personalized, direct visibility. So this is really about ensuring that you are getting in front of your most affluent collectors. We're going to be going through some of the strategies to do so today. And this statistic really blew me away. And this is right from Forbes, that we encounter so many unique pieces of mass marketing. And the more you can be direct, the more you can have this level of exclusivity, this level of personalization. That's really where the working with and stepping away from mass marketing strategies for touching the affluent and stepping into what the affluent truly care about. And that's really where you can continue to have this huge growth. And because concierge style is hard to find, right? Like this is where it's fine dining, it's private medicine. We're starting to think through some of these other industries that have really mastered this personalized, direct concierge style of doing business. It doesn't mean it's hard to implement. Mike and I, prior to getting on, we're talking about the metaverse and how you can buy real estate and start selling in the metaverse. And this is basically the antithesis, the opposite of that conversation. This is not high tech. It is high touch. And that's really what we have found through the research we've been doing and through our clients who are actively selling in this way, that the most affluent among us are really craving this high touch. We've actually brought my son into I have a young son, he's almost 4, into a private pediatrician model, right? Private medicine. The pediatrician comes to our home and it's so remarkably different. And that's exactly what we're talking about. What are some small changes you can make in your current retail scenario in your current stores to truly ensure that your clients feel deeply cared for as we step into, what unprecedented waters are to come. And I want you to know that this is a seat you can take at the table. Like this is something that you can implement. You don't need a huge team. You don't need, any kind of fancy technology that you don't already have at your fingertips. And you can take that stress and guesswork out. I think so often, because there's so much mass marketing advice that's put out there, if you're reading e-commerce, things that aren't geared to the jewelry industry, it's easy to feel like, oh my God, it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall. All right, I'm going to try out Instagram Reels and I'm going to try out all of these different strategies. And when we can have that as icing on the cake, but when we can really be looking at that lowest hanging fruit, what does my book of business already want from me? How can I keep in touch with them? That's really where we start to see the most long-term return on investment. And it really is independent jewelers who make up that huge $3.48 billion number. 88% of independent jewelers have that large market share. So there really is, I think we have such an advantage as an industry because people want to work with a local jeweler. It's really an industry built on trust, whereas, some of the larger players in the room, have a lot of market share, but it's only that 22%. It really is. The majority of jewelry is still being sold by people like you. And it really is, how do we step up? How do we work with the affluent? How do we understand them and their very ever-changing needs? We'll go into a little bit of identifying who they are, what they represent. But it really is, this is a seat for you to take and a space for you to take up and really, really excel in. And I'm Kathleen. So if you have seen any of the presentations I've done with jewelry ecom, this is, what we do. This is the research my team and I do. We're deeply embedded in the affluent market research. I have over a decade of experience both on the bench. I was actually I'm a jewelry maker for a busy store, and then I stepped into a sales role. So I was making jewelry during the week and then selling it on the weekends. And that really taught me the storytelling as well as what truly goes into creating the works that we sell. Then I stepped into the antique and estate market. So for over 10 years, I've been in the industry. And prior to that, I was in the high-end outdoor industry. And what that taught me is how to create a really phenomenal experience. And that's a little bit of what we'll be touching on today. This is really, really foundational. I'm very influenced by how can we look at the past to influence our future? How can we take what worked with our age-old industry and apply it to this up and coming generation, and also some of the modern technology that we have at our fingertips. And I'm here to be your guide, right? Like, this really is 2022. I'm sure will be as unprecedented as 2021, as 2020 was. So this is really about giving you some future ideas, like peeling back for the 45 minutes we have together and starting to think through what is to come. How can we prepare ourselves now to have a really phenomenal next decade? And this is about you guys. Like, this is really looking towards what you are doing, who you are. And you might feel like you are just putting out fires day to day. You haven't actually been able to look up and look towards the future. If you could just get your clients to kind of come back again and again, we call it the red velvet rope strategy. If you didn't let anyone new in and only let existing clients in, you could have a really great business if you kept in touch with them and took exquisite care of your existing clients. And this might also be if you are ready to build this legacy business. Maybe I've worked with many jewelers who are passing the reins down, who have, this transitional period where it's a family business and now it's the next generation taking up this family business. Or this picture made me laugh because I have such a young son. So it's like, okay, maybe, and all the time I'm thinking of how can I set my business up now that it will survive whatever metaverse is to come? How can we use such old school principles that they survive the medium and really are bedrocks of what truly, truly works? And one thing I know about the dozens of jewelers we work with and the hundreds we speak with is that you're ready for affluent clients. And what we talk about with affluent collectors are people who have the money to spend on jewelry, right? They're collectors of art. They're collectors of, they're patrons of the arts. They love to go to the opera when it's available. They love to buy art. They love to have beautiful dining experiences. When we think of the affluent collector, these are people often who love to spend, and they love to spend on people they have a deep connection with. Another like bedrock of definition when we're talking about the affluent, they're typically people who have more money than they do time. So some of the mass marketing techniques that you've been trying, and maybe they haven't been as influential as you've hoped, when you can really unpack what works for the affluent, that's when we can really match the strategy to the audience. And we want them to bring their friends. But the flaw in the strategy is, as I said, kind of at the beginning, the spaghetti at the wall, where you really have this slap shot. Okay, I'm going to post on Instagram and I have to be on Facebook and I've got to learn about the metaverse. And do I need NFTs and all of these different, should I be on TikTok? Is Snapchat where I should be? When we have this mass marketing lens, we're doing a little bit of a lot of things. And I believe that 2022 is calling for something very, very different. And when we think of mass marketing for the affluent clients, we have clients leaving social media, or affluent collectors, clients leaving social media in droves. They're really like dive bombing off of social media. You hear so many more times about social media cleanses, sabbaticals, they're deleting Facebook accounts. There's just been so much instability in some of these marketplaces. The affluent are less likely to give out information. So if you do a giveaway, they're less likely to enter because they don't want their email associated with something that could potentially be sold. If you're working with international clients, Europe is really led the forefront around privacy rights for digital marketers. So there has been a lot of change in the market. And the other challenge with doing mass marketing, which is, we like to say that one-to-many approach, that megaphone approach, still really relevant. I'm not going to say shouldn't be part of your mix, but if you're not equaling that with one-on-one, direct outreach, retention, et cetera, so many affluent are doing business through referrals. So by taking exquisite care, it's the Pareto's principle, 80% of your business comes from 20% of your clients. If you can identify those 20%, if you can keep in touch, create really beautiful experiences for them, they are much more likely to provide you with referrals. And today we are going to be, and we're talking about the affluent as a whole, Ian, and then we will dive into some other segmentation. So great question. But today I'm going to show you how to really, really think differently, how to think of going deep with your clients instead of necessarily wide, and how to really step into being proactive instead of reactive. It's all about embracing what brings us to the business anyway. It's that connection between ourselves and the client. It's stepping away from that client being another number and truly stepping into a deeper relationship with them. So as we think of the 3 keys or the 3 steps to selling to the affluent, the very first step is connecting with them as a genuine friend and trusted advisor. I think a lot of us over the last 10 years thought e-commerce would come eat all of our lunch, right? Come totally replace the brick and mortar location. And what we've learned is that that actually hasn't happened. Even many e-commerce stores have opened brick and mortar locations, Glossier being one example, Warby Parker being another, where they're starting to actually match, they started e-commerce first and they're having physical locations. So as an industry, because we've typically maintained our physical footprint, we have this incredible advantage here to work digitally with people, but continue to step into this role as trusted advisor. And I think that jewelry continues to be a challenging and technical purchase. So having someone to guide you through it continues to be very, very imperative. And as I hinted, you often already know the affluent in your community. They could already be in your book of business, taking a look through those top 20% of your clients, looking towards how you can get them to be repeat, which we'll talk about here. I'm giving you a preview of step number 2, but you typically already know them. They are just starting to rethink through who they are, what that looks like. And the more we can ensure that we have this beautiful connection with them, that is really what is going to be key here. And what you think affluent means. So you're thinking be with a billionaire, but typically, so I think a lot of the time when we're thinking affluent, and affluent, we'll get into some more definitions here in a moment, but you're typically thinking private jets, sports cars, flashy suits, anywhere but your town. I took some of these, places that you might think. So a little bit of these like bigger communities. But when we can actually digest and think of what the affluent collector really looks like in 2022, that's when we start to think of millionaires next door, right? I think so often we're thinking, okay, the affluent, how do I work with these people who fly around the country? There's only so few of them. But when we can actually think of the affluent being, there's so many different segments of the affluent. But when we think of billionaires as this very, very small number of people, but when we think of millionaires being 8% of the population, this is really where they can be those people who are just next door, who are principals in your community. They can own, they could be real estate developers. They could be the real estate agents in your community, the dentists. When we can really understand that we have plenty of people in our own neighborhoods and our own communities who have this beautiful connection with us and are wanting to spend money rather on jewelry, that's when we can change our thinking about the affluent being out there and actually the affluent being much closer to home than we could have considered in before. And then just to note, I'm going to be saving questions towards the end because I do have a lot to cover, but I will keep an eye on chat as you guys are asking some questions. So another definition with the affluent, and we're talking typically about those who have and make over 250K per year, just to give some context, definitely not, the ultra high net worth individuals. That's coming closer, high net being 500K and above, ultra high net worth being, 0.01% of the population. And when we start to think of the affluent, the main definition I typically have is they have more money than they do time. These are not people who want the best deal in town, but some of them, love a great deal. But this is really about how can we step into this concierge style? How can we be there as that trusted advisor and genuine friend? So just give a little context there. but they prefer connection over technology. So oftentimes will be doing research online, but they're going to pick up the phone, text with you, want to stop in, make a private appointment, for example. They're often going to be closing, as it were, in person. So that's something that if you haven't really adopted, or if you left it in lieu of something else, that's really what we are doing. Hey, Ellen, I'm on a call, buddy. Sorry. And they are younger than you might think. So based on research in the art market, younger collectors were the most active at higher price levels. Hey, Ellen, hey, bud, I'm on a call. It's live. I love you. My son is here on, 1 second. It is President's Day and my son is here at home and his nanny just left the room for a moment. So there he is. So based on research in the art market, younger collectors, and that's something I think we can underestimate, but with 2.6 million weddings, those are typically our younger collectors. So across all regions, 24% of millennial collectors regularly transacted at over 1 million in 2021. So I think we actually, when preparing this presentation, dove into the art market, just because that is a highly, highly researched, typically a few more zeros associated with it in terms of volume of purchase. But when we were preparing this, kind of state of the industry, we did look at that wider collector market as well. And they have been steady. Millennials, I think sometimes when we think of affluent, we do have that idea of they are not buying at the same age. I think often I do quite a bit of research and quite a bit of presenting on that millennial consumer, and they just are older than we think. Millennials are now 35 and up. They have much more spending power. They've typically come into their own in their careers. They have different preferences. So when we do think of this affluent client market, we do want to make sure we're not discounting how they are growing and a little bit younger as well. And I'm glad I just pulled up chat. Good. I'm glad you are. It is like one of those things. He just wanted to watch a movie. So there we are. But when we think of affluent buyers, and again, this is really how can we ground into, this is something everyone wants, right? They want trust. They want relationship. When we can truly understand that those affluent have the influence, they have the money to present that, they have the money to be able to buy that, right? I'm sharing that we have I have a young son. We have this private pediatrician, and it's changed the game for us. I can text with her, I can connect with her. It really is so much more intimate. And that's when we think of these are things that everyone wants, everyone desires. But when we can understand that the affluent among us care about this and have the resources to procure this, people are 4 times more likely to buy when referred by a friend. Like, this is really among the affluent, this level increases as well. And this is real, right? Like, I don't mean everything we talk about is really grounded in this is true. This is things that are really, really actively happening. So one client just actually emailed me out of the blue, and she shared that she just had a $45K engagement ring sale come to her from a relationship that she had had for 20 years. So she had proactively kept in touch with an old colleague. And as that old colleague's daughter, or son rather, was looking to get engaged, instead of flying to New York City and going to a big, flashy, well-known jewelry location, he wanted to work with her, and she identifies herself as much more of a private jeweler. So it's a much more intimate experience. So this really is when we can understand, when we can keep in touch with these networks, this is when we can ensure that we have that connection, that we have those people who are ready to buy. I do think that we now more than ever want to work with people we trust, people we know, people who have a brick and mortar location in our town. So when we can make sure that we're not necessarily comparing ourselves to kind of the bigger people in the room, continuously looking outwards of, oh, if I could just find the affluent on, with Facebook ads, if I could just find the affluent and write the perfect blog post for them, we're actually putting in this infrastructure and putting in this connection with them as well. And making this work for you, keeping connected with your network. I think so often we've been heads down in the industry. We've been, on our computers looking to connect in these ways as we are right now. But when we can look up and truly understand that old colleagues, philanthropic networks, referral partners, financial planners, real estate agents, others in your community can be really, really influential for us. And that's something that you can implement right now. In fact, with the clients that we work with the jewelers we work with, we have them each week identify someone that they can connect with, identifying someone that they can, work with in their community, a business partner referral, an older colleague that they might have had in the past, a college roommate, someone you worked with in a totally different industry. When we can connect on that personal level, we call it the precious 100. When you can have that precious 100 of either past clients, as well as your own referral network, that's really when you can build a phenomenal business. Those people might not buy, but as soon as they're ready to, have a referral out to you, that's when they can really, really connect with you. And then another bonus take-home strategy is making sure that when we're thinking of younger collectors, we're looking towards the art market in this way, that we're not judging them based on outdated metrics. I think in the last 2 years, everything has gotten more casual. And I know I was behind the sales counter. So, I have that experience of when someone walks in, you're looking at them and you are trying to understand what they might be. Do you know them? Have you seen them before? We're taking in, because we're salespeople, we're taking in so much information. And I think especially with the up and coming generations, when we can look towards making sure that we are continuing to present what we call that penthouse offer, that we're continuing to present these larger pieces that we might have, that starts to look towards sales strategy. But, people who might not be old enough or have that right look to buy, just continuing to understand that everything has gotten more casual. I always joke about a time I was in New York City and had, someone was wearing a beanie and jeans and white sneakers, but they were all designer, right? It looked like it could have been a, $50 outfit. And I knew based on some tiny labels that I was seeing, it was actually a $5,000 outfit. So I think the more we can attune ourselves to what wealth really looks like, and we can attune our judgments of our staff as well, that's really when we can make sure that we are continuing to connect with this affluent community. We often call this stealth wealth, right? We have so many more people who have the money to spend, but they're not necessarily going to come into your store looking like they are ready. So those are some notes on the affluent, what they look like, that they are much more part of your community, already in your Rolodex, your personal Rolodex, as well as your client list also, and your community. So we are going to continue to monitor chat, make sure my sound's good, but I will come back to questions at the end. So number 2 of selling to the affluent is really creating an outstanding experience. So this is pulled from, research done with, people in the last 2 years, but especially from my experience in the high-end outdoor industry. So this is really about, how can I look towards fine dining? How can I look towards, luxury travel? And how can you, in a microcosm of a way, develop a high-touch concierge style of doing business? And when we think of 85% of high net worth individuals, so again, we're talking high net worth, those, when we think of the affluent, it's 250K and above. For income, it's excluding assets, and 67% of mass affluent. So mass affluent being the people 100K and above, or they have a significant amount of assets, they're going to experience more, or they're going to pay for experiences. And I think the more we can, this is again, stepping into being proactive instead of reactive. I drive by jewelry stores all the time. Doors are open, beautiful stores, But I always wonder, are you inviting people in? Are you creating moments for people to step in? We'll go through some really specific examples here at the end of ideas you could do. But the more we can, as business is getting slightly more back to usual, as you can have potentially more people in smaller intimate settings come into your store, starting to think through, how can I create this to be a fantastic experience, just like fine dining from start to finish? What that means for you is you need a signature process. You need, beyond just a sales process, if you're doing custom, you need to have it fully mapped out. You need to have a follow-up process beautifully mapped out as well. So when you can craft a signature process, I always again pull in this high fine dining example of, if you imagine going into a restaurant and they kind of just, sometimes the waiter came by and sometimes your food came out late and sometimes the waitress didn't drop off the ticket order at the back end, or she didn't do it all in the same orchestrated way every single time. That's when we can really, really benefit from looking outside the industry. How can I have every moment crafted? So from when someone walks in the door, I would imagine everyone knows that you're greeting well, you're taking it kind of through the sales presentation, but what's happening after? What happens when the sales isn't, you're not walking to the register, but what is that next touch point? Are you sending them, asking for their text number to send them a video? How can you ensure that you're making this a beautiful win-win process? Because to carefully craft the experience is to maintain that customer with so much noise, right? We talked about how I don't think the jewelry websites are out to take out brick and mortar. I think we really can work in concert. But what we have advantage of, even if you're more concierge style of doing business virtually or online, if you can craft the experience all the way through, it just really makes sure that you have this deeper connection with those clients. Because small businesses are perfectly aligned to implement this, right? We're not large businesses who have to go through, corporate to have some of these playbooks and strategies in place, because we typically already have such a deeper connection with the clients that we're working with. We have, this amazing ability to make these small tweaks, to have these deeper connections with the clients right in front of us. So making sure that you are actively working with your clients, or with your staff rather, to create a roadmap from start to finish, and particularly following up if someone reaches out to you online. If you go back, and I think it was the presentation we did last year, which Mike, you'll have to let me know if I think is still there, but we did, it was more on social selling. It was much more about how to close sales virtually, whereas this year we're expanding it into kind of the affluent and how to bridge that gap between virtual and brick and mortar. But mapping out the responses that you want from from when someone inquires on Instagram, having a few responses for your person to respond with, that doesn't just put them in like a clerking spot, but really mimics that in-store experience. So mapping out all the way there. How are you inviting them in for a private appointment, for example? What the sales presentation is, which is, most jewelers have already thought that part through. They're just not thinking of the pre part to having someone physically in the store, and especially that follow-up portion to having someone in the store. So when we do have someone in who isn't buying right away, maybe it's an engagement ring, maybe they're putting together some options, looking towards a way that is, again, affluent respective. So not saying sign up for my newsletter and we'll keep in touch, because someone who values privacy might not be open to doing that, but someone who feels like you're really in it for that win-win scenario would say yes to, this was great. We narrowed it down, Ms. Smith, to 3 different options. What I'm going to do after is shoot a quick video for you and send it to you. Would you prefer text or email? So when you can, again, script out the entirety of this presentation and have this follow-up cadence where you are keeping in touch with them, you're letting them know when new pieces come in that might fit their profile. That's when we can truly step into this concept of sales truly being of service. And when we have this fully mapped out, that is when we can shift in that way. And ensuring privacy continues to just be something that is trending up towards for everybody, but especially for the affluent among us. Yeah, I said I would really make sure this was grounded in true case studies. We've had quite a few of our retailers, notably someone based in the San Francisco area, go to private appointments, and she has a smaller showroom. So she's decided to stick exclusively with private appointments, and you might make a choice to have it open to walk-ins as well. But what she said is her close rate has gone up significantly. And we actually had another jeweler who added over $1.2 million in the last year and attributes quite a bit of that growth to this feeling of private appointments, where they could have that intimacy, where you don't feel like you're being interrupted by a tourist walking in off the street. So when you can kind of think through this entire experience, how do I want someone to be taken care of just as if it was fine dining? How can I map it out, the entirety of the experience, and how can I exclude a level of privacy? Again, this isn't just for we call them your EICs, your extremely important collectors, but this could be for everyone in your community might want private appointments. If you want to implement it, some of these ways that this could work for you would be preparing in advance, right? Having a digital capacity to book a calendar appointment where they could let you know what they're looking for, what things that they would love to see. So, and you can prepare prior, and then you have a way to connect with them after. So I think so often we feel like when we're right in front of that person, that's our opportunity to sell. But when you can expand that window and really feel like you're that trusted advisor, genuine friend, that's when so many more sales will happen. And we have another example of that here in a moment too. And then making sure your offline supports your online presence. So this is when we keep in touch with birthday cards, with making sure we're not just reaching out, as one of my colleagues likes to say, when you have money signs in your eyes, not just right before the holidays, not right before Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, but you're keeping in touch with a regular cadence. This is a really, really important thing to be doing, both for existing clients, but also for those who, start to become big referral sources for you. When we can proactively keep in touch, again, here's that word, proactive versus reactive. This is really, really where we can continue to grow our businesses. And then the number 3 key is focusing on client retention. So if you've watched any of the presentations I've done for Jewelry Ecom or read some of the articles that we produce, we really, really want you to focus on that Pareto principle that we've touched on earlier today. 80% of your revenue typically comes from 20% of your clients. So when we can ensure that we have this deep cadence, this deep connection, we're getting to know them, we're being proactive with them, because it takes five times less time, money, and effort to maintain clients than to attract new ones. And again, this is where we deviate from mass marketing strategies, which look at, okay, if I just have more traffic, if just more Instagram people, more followers on Instagram, and we look instead at our current book of business, if we look instead at who is already around, that's when we can truly make sure that we're taking exquisite care of our existing clients. And to step back to the artist world, less than 1/3 of sales were to new buyers in that 2021 to current, or 2020 to modern day period, current 2 years later. It feels already like, these different eons. But dealers anecdotally reported most sales were to existing clients, and the same for the high net worth. So the more we can really understand that everyone wants to work with trusted advisors, but the high net worth among us, those who are in that 250K and above, we define them, again, anecdotally, as people who have more money than they do time. They're going to not necessarily want to sift through some of the online marketplaces. They're going to go to you as a trusted advisor and say, Mike, what are the 3 pieces I should be looking at for my partner for, this upcoming holiday? So when you can have this open line of communication, that's really when you can see that beautiful repeat business. And the affluent are typically going to value direct contact. They're going to want to know you have this exclusive lens. They're going to want to know that you were thinking of them directly. So this is the difference between having that one too many, right, where you have this kind of larger lens, but also having a one-on-one strategy where you're keeping more deeply in touch with them. And the old strategy was to go wide, and this new one is to go deep. And I really do believe that this is what, as an industry, will support us in our growth. The more we can continue to attract new clients, it's not to say that we don't want to work on these larger megaphone projects where we get newer collectors in, but we also need to ensure that we're keeping in touch with the existing people, that we're bringing a depth, we're bringing some privacy, we're bringing these different elements in play as well. And it really does work, you guys. Like this, we had a client who we teach a strategy of reaching out to lapsed legacy clients, people you haven't seen in a few years. And one of our clients reached out to someone she hadn't spoken to in 3 years. And this client had bids out, actually. She had been in touch. She was on the East Coast and my client was on the West Coast. She had been in touch with 2 local jewelers to find a pretty phenomenal gemstone. And my client reached out. Because she had her signature process, she was able to walk her through. Because there was so much trust there, they agreed in like a 5-day period to close. And then that client came back again and again in a 1-year period, resulting in 6 figures of gemstone sales. So if she hadn't reached out to that client, then she wouldn't have had that business. And that client was just out there waiting for someone else to get back to her because they did not have that signature process. So this really is, these 3 keys deeply work together. Understanding those affluent people, that they're much more in your community and not necessarily just on yachts and being wooed by other jewelers. Looking towards creating the signature process, making sure everyone in your sales staff, including you, is walking them through a signature process so nothing is falling through the cracks. And then also proactively reaching out. I think so often we're like, oh, I don't want to bother them. If they were around, they'd come in. But when we can come from that genuine connection, genuine friendship, that's when we can really, really influence them when they are ready to buy. And to make this work for you, we are big fans of looking at least your top 10 clients, really getting intimate with the top 20%, but the minimum is the top 10, understanding their needs, their wants, their habits, their kids' names, their dogs' names. My son's named Elwin. He showed up on the call today. My dog's named Toby. He was outside, really starting to, Mike and I were joking before, like we all have just gotten so much more human, right? I'm presenting from my home. You guys know that. Mike, I think I saw him and his daughter pop on screen for a moment. The more we can truly go back to being this family jeweler, to, we have clients who are invited to weddings, that are invited to funerals, like really stepping in, understanding when your clients win a big case, that they might be looking for a new piece of jewelry to celebrate. When they get divorced, a lot of times that's a time that they want to redo their jewelry. So the more we can really be intimately involved, as much as possible through our community, have these deep connections, that's when we can gain that repeat business. And then mapping out this retention strategy, we recommend about every 3 months, proactively reaching out to those collectors, having a cadence that's not just sales, but truly making sure that they love their piece. Does this piece need to be serviced? Something to keep in mind if you bought an emerald, having it feel very, very tailored and personalized to this EICs, your extremely important collectors. Again, we can't do this for every single person who comes into our store. So we do have to have a slightly elevated, slightly separate strategy for those repeat buyers, the people who are buying kind of at that top 10, 20% of our book of business. And this is all really powerful on its own, right? Like understanding the affluent buyer, being able to recognize them, see them in your community, to truly understand how to create a signature system that they love or signature process, and then proactively keep in touch with them once they've bought. But I want to show you what it all looks like. So like, what would this look like in 2022? Getting away from your computer and you get lunch with an old college buddy, right? When I say this strategy to people, they're like, oh my God, no, I got to just stay focused on the business. But so much it comes from the quality of our networks. I think so often we hear your network is your net worth. It's really the quality of your network that influences your buy or your net worth, as it were. So you get a lunch with an old colleague. She mentions her daughter is about to get married or has someone she knows. but you're not going to wait around for the call. So you're joining a charity network, you're going to the gym at the high-end spot in your neighborhood, you're hosting some regular places and ways that people from your community, there we go, something else too. You're hosting a regular night with, a local wine vendor in your community. They're bringing their clients in. You're having this reason to come in, maybe even a smaller way, connect, browsing the new collection. And a few weeks later, you do get that call. And again, I think so often when I share these strategies, people discount them. People say, yeah, Kathleen, I know, but I got to really be focused on launching my new website, or I really have to be focused on Instagram marketing. And while those are big pieces as well, because this might feel rudimentary, this might feel too easy, it doesn't feel like real work, it does result in sales. It really has. Every time I share this, they're like, yeah, Kathleen, I know if I called up Sally, she'd come in and she would buy. We have to be doing it. We have to create our schedules to be proactively reaching out, because a few weeks later, that college friend, hey, you get a call and this person is primed to buy. They're ready to go. Meanwhile, your staff is texting, they're following up with their people instead of having all of these people languishing in the edge of not closed sales calls or languishing on pieces of paper in manila envelopes. They're proactively reaching out. They're inviting people back in. They're sharing when something new is coming in. And other staff members creating this or sending out some annual gifts, not right at Christmas, but around some other holiday, maybe in July or something along those lines. And when we can have these strategies, have these old school strategies with this modern touch, really come into concert together, that's when we can truly ensure that we're priming ourselves with this old school playbook, right? It's not to say that all of these other strategies, maybe next year we'll be doing a lecture on buying real estate in the metaverse, Mike. I know that's what we were talking about prior, but if we're in the metaverse, we still need to be having these deep connections. We still need to be truly understanding the other person on the side of the counter or on the other side of the screen. And the result of all these things, these different strategies, which can be done in concert, this one-on-one connection, you can, like some of our clients who add $1 million each year to their bottom line from these more deeply connected ways of doing business. It's the difference between having a totally new person walk in or someone always spends $50K when they walk in. You're going to feel different and open the door in a different way when that happens. And more importantly, you've revitalized these relationships. And instead of just going wide and hoping, to get new affluent collectors, you're truly looking at what you already have. We always say the best clients are the ones you have, right? Like this really is, the more we can understand those who've bought from us once are 5 times. So that's like doing 5 times less marketing, 5 times less selling when we can have our existing clients come back again and again. And one of the metrics, I concern myself the most with is, instead of just average order value, what is our lifetime value? How often are our clients coming back in again and again? And instead of just hoping that that happens, hoping that they walk by and that they're ready to purchase, that we're proactively inviting them into the store. And it really is all about building better relationships with your clients, which I know when these strategies are implemented consistently and they sit alongside the mass marketing, the megaphone strategies, when we can have that beautiful depth, our clients that we mentor, have more fun too. They're enjoying it. They're getting to know their clients, and then they can actually step in as that trusted advisor because they know their profession. You shouldn't be having a ring that is high profile because your wife's a surgeon. These different types of things, we can truly step in as that trusted advisor. And this is about creating sustainability, no matter what comes with the economy. I'm not an economist. I have a pulse through the research we do, through the white papers we write, and I don't know what's going to happen. But I do know that if we can flip back on a playbook from 20 years ago, 40 years ago, which really, really valued deeper relationships, valued connection, that's what we can look towards and modernize as we step into another unknown, We don't know what's going to happen, what the economy is going to bring, but we do know that if we can deeply, deeply regard, track, and proactively keep in touch with our best clients, that's the very best shot we have at keeping, our section of that $3.48 billion slice of the jewelry industry. So I'm going to pop into questions. I think you guys have really, really great ones. We do have about 5 minutes here to answer questions, so put them in chat. And if you do want to find out more or keep connected, we do quite a bit of research. We share a lot. So we do have another webinar if you do want to watch that, and would love to stay in touch. So Mike, do you have any questions that are coming through, or do you want me to? Oh, you're on mute now. Okay, so I'm going to go through.
Yeah, I'm gonna go start the next session in a few, so I'll take over chat and stuff.
Okay, awesome. So I'll be in chat. I have about 5 minutes here. As you heard, my son, that was just too funny that he had to pop in. And Ian, I'm glad you said, yes, he is tenacious. He really, really wanted a movie. And while I value that, it just wasn't the time. So put some chat or questions that you guys have in chat. Haley, it's great to see you. Mike, thanks for being here and helping us with tech. And yes, Bridget, no more unprecedented times. And that's my hope, right? My hope is that we don't continue to have unprecedented times. And yet, I do think we need to think it through. I do think that we need to have a playbook in place and be actively working it as potentially unprecedented times do happen. Let's see. Yes, so I think in Bermuda, Ian says, affluent means it owns you more than 3 boats. And everyone's demographic will look different, right? 250K in New York City, you're going to most likely be more mass affluent. 250K in Oklahoma, you're maybe going to be more affluent, which is why I think that for everyone's market segment, it matters about your own community. And when we can redefine the affluent as people who are going to typically have more money than they do time, that's how we can hone our strategies with them. It's more personalized, it's more one-on-one. You're doing the thinking for them. You're not saying, hey, just come into my store and browse. You're saying, hey, Mr. Smith, I picked out 3 pieces you might like. Would you like to come by on your lunch? So while these are strategies that we can kind of have for everyone, we do really want to tailor it to our most busy people, right? Those people who have more money than they do time. Okay, then my son came in. And Bridget asked a really great question about philanthropic, or about really conservation-minded Gen Z, and I would argue millennials, and really all of us. I do feel that we've all kind of had this awakening towards sustainability, and we can see this in the fashion industry. So I do think that we highly recommend all of the clients we mentor and work with to connect with their local philanthropic networks. If you are using recycled gold, antique stones, which are arguably potentially more ethical than newly mined stones, like when we can highlight some of those things that we are doing, it does connect more deeply with some of the younger, but also the older clientele as well. So I do think that when we can have an arm, that one philanthropic is, efforts are great places to network, but they also are really great places to show that you are deeply rooted in your community. And I think that everyone cares about that, but those affluent are going to want to work with the experts in the field. So if you have any, if you've been featured anywhere, if you have advanced credentials, if you are sitting on the boards of schools or local charities, making sure you're mentioning some of that can go really, really far when someone is researching you or looking to work with you for the very first time. And yes, that is a big conversation. So it might be one for future, but yes, the lab diamonds, recycled metals, et cetera. I think the more you can highlight that, and again, when you're mapping out your process, you might be having some dovetails in there as well. And fantastic. It was so, so great to have you guys here. I'll let you get to the next presentation. And yeah, really thinking on how we can rethinking online product presentation in person. Yeah. How can we weave through like so much, and we teach our clients, and we're always on the forefront of this and experimenting. What is asynchronistic, right? So instead of needing someone to come into your showroom and park in a busy downtown location, how can we move towards asynchronistic conversations, which it could be via text, it could be via video chat, it could be at, a time when you're both on Zoom together, like we are all now, but so many people will also watch this replay. So it's starting to think through, how can I continue to be adaptable? How can I really make sure I'm not just heads down in my business, working on it, or rather in it, and I'm really looking up and taking a look around and continuing to work on the business. So great to have you guys here. Wishing everyone a great President's Day. And please let us know if you have any questions. I really look forward to continuing this conversation, and I will end it, and we'll be in touch soon. All right. Bye, everybody.